All right. So what I was saying is that I noticed that when I started making when I made recent videos, I've been speaking about what's been on my mind, but also what I've been experiencing, and then I've seen synchronicities like within algorithms or in life based on things that I've said, either the exact example of what I said or like someone having the same experience as what I said. So I made reference in the video prior to this that I had been warned as a young person about scaling like large mountains, like by my friend's father who was Native American and spent time with us in nature, like teaching us a lot of things such as healthy fear and respect for our own life and the feelings of our loved ones like around danger stuff. And he was talking about these people that would get overextended and compromise scaling mountains in the past, and then they would have like these sophisticated radio communication for that time and make their last phone call. So you think about how dramatic that'd be, your last meal. What about your last phone call to someone you love, knowing that you cannot make it back, and what that would mean for both of you, but especially to them about to lose you. So I had made that statement about one of the great lessons of my childhood, and then that's a lot of, maybe you could say that what got me thinking like sometimes you actually become a man or what will be your iteration of a man before you were legally designated that. And that for me, that was a shift right there, because I had less of fear when I was young, but also maybe less of respect for my own life. And then when he taught just that simple insight, it taught me to respect life. And so that was a big change for me. But then I saw a video in the algorithm on YouTube about recently a man who his frozen corpse with all of his gear and attire and face gear and camping equipment was right there vividly on like the Himalayas, and someone was taking a picture of that person losing their life like that, and that had been exactly what I was talking about. And I don't know if that was like if the algorithm perceived that I had made that statement and presented it, or if it was a synchronicity or both. But I just wanted to say that that's an example of how we're actually all connected. So that's some of what's significant about like days, like so there are holidays. There are certain days that are auspicious. That means like they bring blessings, and also certain days that are very difficult. Sometimes you don't appreciate that we're all connected. So if we're having a certain type of day, likely all people are having that exact same day, but according to their iteration in the timeline of their decisions and blessings and challenges. But they're still, from a certain point, having the same day as you because they are the same as you. So I met a man a couple of days ago. Another example is that I had been thinking in my mind, I was walking past a school where I went, and when I was a young person, there was a kid that was like, he was like very intelligent, very savvy, and but like kind of just winning, like winning at school, winning at life, like as a young person when school would be difficult for other people, and some of us would have like different stuff going on in our life. Like I said in this video that I could be wicked when I was young. So like one thing wicked that I did when I was young is that I had like a locker. They'd be like a locker, a high, like a locker at waist level and a locker at floor level. And this kid had to like bend down and lean down to like get stuff out of his locker. And then I don't know, I just exactly put my locker, the door of my locker above his head. And then when he stood up, he hit his head really hard like that. That was just a wicked thing that came into my mind that I did when I was young. But I think that some of it is actually because of the things that I was experiencing in my home. But you sometimes you don't see how that filters out into your actions, but also the things that you do and that are done to you. Sometimes you don't appreciate how the dynamics in your home filter out like that. But it doesn't stop when you're a child. Actually, it continues the rest of your life. And even if your family are no longer with us, those actual dynamics, they can play out like that. So the YouTuber Julian Blanc, who goes by Julian himself, he was associated with that RSD Tyler, and also worked for RSD back in the day. I learned a lot from both of them. And he was saying that sometimes people, the actual relationship that they had with their family, like especially like with their father, they struggle with that the rest of their life. And some people you can be in your middle age, like 40, when there's still a lot of enjoyment of life to be had, but you're still struggling with coping with and interfacing with the dynamics and footing that you left your house, your home with, as that serves you or doesn't serve you. but it can be the same at any range. But so it's like that for me as a child. But then another thing I did, there would be this kid that he'd be like winning at life in school because he was just actually honest. He was like really gifted intellectually, athletically, and he was actually a really cool dude. He was cool as hell. He didn't mean nothing against nobody, but he'll actually whoop everyone's ass just being himself like that. And for some reason, like we were playing this game, and like we were playing soccer in in gym, and like from behind him, like I put my feet in between his feet as he was running, and I tripped him, and he's like, "What the hell, man?" And that's actually the right thing to say because there's no reason to do that. But actually, I realized that that actually might have been the most profound thing that I did in school, which is that here goes the school, here goes the valedictorian of the school, for lack of a better word. I don't know how he graduated in high school, but I'd imagine he'd be within at least your top 25 of the graduating class of whatever he went. That's being generous. He'd probably be closer to valedictorian than that. I would imagine that person because he's very intelligent and he was very successful at a young age. But so you could say that he'd almost be like a representative of that school, whatever that school amounted to, like in terms of value, whatever was the potential of that school to impact the students, but also the community for educating the students. He would have been like the cream of that, the representative of that. But one of the most significant things I did was to trip him like that. And so by me employing footwork, I caused a cog. I caused a discrepancy in the cog like that of that school. That school was to students. That school was wicked to me. The school, the teachers, and sometimes you don't. There used to be this movie in the film in the '90s called The Faculty. I think, and they play that song like, "We don't need no education." Like it was really cool, and they're showing you how wicked it is, actually playing into like the wickedness of like faculties in school, whether or not they're actually intentionally abusing anyone. Just they're drawing a livelihood from forcing children to be there, and some of their attitudes and their banter and their gossip and their politics as facilitators, faculty. It can be a evil experience to children. I get evil vibes whenever I go into a middle school. Like even sometimes I take adult lessons that are available in the community for adults that are located at my actual middle school where I went to, like for adult community education. And they're just very strong. If you really wanted to feel the sensation of ghosts or like maybe tormented children, stuff like that, you wouldn't have to go to a haunted house. Just go to a former or a present elementary middle school, and you can feel some of the pain and the cries of young people in middle school, exactly when life began to become thick and heavy. But actually the actual faculty in a school, it's not limited to the adults because the students themselves, there's actually, so they say like in the streets. I listened to this Hispanic brother that offers great insight on the Star Report. That's like a former hip hop host from like I think like Hot 97 in New York, but then also he was on Everyday Struggle on Complex, and he has his own show called The Star Report. His name is actually Star. He has a really brilliant, open-minded radio forum where he addresses a lot of subjects. He's exactly himself, and like he sticks his foot on his mouth, and he's not shy about being himself, and he's comical, but he also brings in great insights and contrasting opinions. That might actually be the cream of YouTube right there, is to have a show with topical dialogue on current events, and you bring in exactly contrasting viewpoints comically, but challenging one another intellectually, and you actually can achieve understanding like that with the juxtaposition of opposites. And then you would say, as long as you don't get your feelings hurt, but sometimes people exactly get their feelings hurt, and there's more lessons to be learned for them getting their feelings hurt publicly. But it's so you got all this commotion, but it settles down to the truth if you let people engage dialogue publicly, but with also being calibrated by an audience of a vast swath of background. That might actually be the best standpoint for us to get better with some of our decisions around like policy. Is that it's not that you have this one person that has all the answers. If anything, that's the worst idea. But an open dialogue, thoughtful dialogue, collaboration of experience and insight and standpoint is really awesome. But this Hispanic brother contributes a lot, and he can really have a knack for like for politics of the United States, and he was saying that if you appreciate the higher tiers of both street activity, criminal activity, for lack of a better word, and law enforcement, for lack of a better word, they kind of dovetail like the ends of a spectrum, and they likely have a workable, if not cozy, relationship. I don't mean to be disrespectful when I say cozy, but an actual may have more affinity than you would appreciate on the surface, and that might just be forced by the nature of their profession. You do certain profession, you have to work with certain people. You get higher up, it may be unseeming who you'd actually work with, but at a certain point, things overlap and dovetail and blend like that because we're actually all connected. So you can't get past that. But that would be like for crime, like crime and law, they overlap and they're maybe different expressions, different poles of the same thing, and they can injure or help people, likely both. But school is like that too, where the faculty, it's not actually just the adults. Some of the students, they get brought on board and they're having sway, influence, political power, say so. Sometimes if you have a child that they're just terrified to go to school, they will not go to school. So you can imagine how horrible that'd be if a child wouldn't go to school because an authority figure was exerting influence that put them in danger or at jeopardy, whether psychologically or existentially. They could just feel that they weren't sturdy to be there. But you wouldn't appreciate that it could actually be a peer of theirs that is having similar clout, pull, influence, authority, as though they had been licensed and paid. And they actually are paid because they're compensated in different social graces, social favor, social privilege with the other students, but also with faculty and further opportunity. The students are actually at that point. So the students are actually brought on board. So if you wanted to have the best guard for a prison, yeah, the guards are on the surface. The guards, they play the role so that we can still, so actually the guards actually give cover for the real guards. So the prison guards, the correctional officers, they give cover for the real corrections and the real guarding, which is the other inmates. And as they are compensated for that in different privileges and favors and maybe gifts too. But because I watched one video that said that I can't recall this man's name, but he said that what actually runs a prison, the real power within a prison, is the contraband. It's not the guards or the inmates. It's the flow of contraband that has the real life and death authority and grace and mercy. It's along contraband like that. But then I think that in school they actually almost, I don't know how you could compare how well they deprive contraband in a prison and in a school. I'm talking like K through 12. But in school, the real authority, it would be influence. That's the real power in a school that runs the school, is influence. And it's not limited to the faculty, and it's not deprived of the students. The actual students that have the right mentality of the faculty, actually, they're better at managing the other students. And because I remember when I would be a school bus driver, and I had some students on my hands that were exactly combative and confrontational. It's actually sad to say, but there's some racial element. They're very young, but they were of different ethnicities, and they were specifically engaging each other, such as very seriously, like they would ignore my reproof, but then also it would get to the point of getting put. You'd have to log stuff like that, but it was getting very serious. But also, it wasn't the school wasn't entirely competent to handle these students and their combat without doing something drastic. So it was getting up to the point where one of them was first suspended from school and near about at the point of expulsion. So you have these two students that they are imminently fighting. They will fight if they see each other, and they don't care what authority is there or not, or what authority knows about it, or who parent found out about it. They're gonna fight. But but the school actually doesn't have a way to handle that, even as they're very young. These were small students, very small, the smaller range of elementary. But then so the discipline escalates, but they haven't completely been stripped of their privilege to ride, but the discipline escalates. So it's only a matter of time until the discipline, until they cancel themselves in their privilege. So they did this, they know they're gonna do this. There's nothing they can actually do about it, savvy or smooth or skilled enough to address that, to mediate that. But they are mandated to give them another opportunity to figure it out. That is, they're giving them another chance to get back on and fight imminently likely and then get kicked off. So it's almost like there's nothing to do but remove them, and one of them has to get stripped of their privilege. So the first one, soonest one to mess up bad enough that gets the blame is going to be the one to get themselves removed, and then that solves it. So the solution from their level of skill was to separate the students. But the only way to do that effectively would be to do it permanently. But you have to let them mess up bad enough till one of them get to do that. That's a little bit similar, like with some of our life, like where in a system of inflation, but also neo-feudalism such as we had, a lot of your standing and stature in life is part of your family. There's some misconceptions that people have, like when they immigrate to the United States, especially like the American dream. So like a lot of times, like people of a that have immigrated here. I watched a video by King Noble, and he said that sometimes people, they give African American, that is American Africans that have the authentic experience of being born and reared in the United States and having connections to the culture of other American Africans who have been reared in the United States. This is a sweeping statement, but he said that sometimes American African brothers, as you see them out of jobs, out of doors in the daytime or in life, it's not that they don't want to do well for themselves or have initiative, but they know the falseness of this narrative, the actual manipulation in games and tactics of gaming one another, that marginalized people get the brunt of, the short end of the stick, so they don't engage those games. But sometimes people immigrating here, they may not actually have that context in that history, so they can actually be naive to some of the real history, politics, and brutalities of the United States, and they are attracted to and believe in, subscribe in, invest in the idealistic concept of the American dream, a piece of the American pie, and by that means they understand that they can raise themselves up by their bootstraps. Now they're anticipated to be like that, and there are certain accommodations that are available for them, knowing that they're going to come here with that mind frame, and actually maybe some of the they may actually be they maybe actually haven't got some of the detrimental experience of experiencing the American society, so they may be actually better suited to engage certain initiatives because they haven't had their self-esteem injured the same way as people in the United States, or been within some of our cycles that are part of the United States, the violence, the substance, stuff like that, the social, also the co-opting and corrupting of culture, the tactics that have been used against the American Africans, and the effect that that's had, the corruption of trust that's had. Sometimes someone coming here, they wouldn't be a part of that, so they'd actually have some strength by not being implicated in those cycles at this point. But then also the idealism that you can build yourself up from your bootstraps. It's not that you can't do that, but how you do that may be different than what you're thinking, or your ability to do that may be different for you thinking like that than had you been raised here. I'm not trying to make excuses with that, but I'm just saying that if you really are of the American experience, you may come to appreciate that a lot of your opportunity in life, it comes from privilege, standing, and property. A lot of that, what you are able to experience of that, it comes from your family. You wouldn't have access to that without certain graces and blessings of your family. Maybe you could say education would be the most simple of that, or even the leisure to engage education in a home that's free of substance or some of these other cycles, that you actually have the space and leisure and health of self-esteem and confidence to engage education, and then maybe other work opportunities. You can't isolate that from the dynamics of the family. So sometimes people may not appreciate how family works in our outcomes, but as education goes, the sometimes when students are terrified of going to school, it's not just because of the actual adult faculty. It might be the adult faculty's incompetence in the actual real power and sway of the other students. So I just want to say that in the United States, in the Western school system, the actual students, different degrees of other students, they're compensated and they're incentivized to one, compete with their peers, but also leverage, to also exert leverage and authority over their other peers. And some of their opportunities for education the confidence to succeed at education, and then also social opportunities, the confidence to engage social opportunities, and what those experiences would and would not amount to for their developing experience of life and of themselves, their personality that will play out the rest of their life. Some of that, I just want to say, that can lend itself towards some of the epidemic in like what we say is like mental health crisis. Is that why don't you? So you can make money with mental health. You can also make money from different vices and shortcomings in a society. Sometimes you don't appreciate how lucrative the different problems of our society is. Like for example, like healthcare. Healthcare is very lucrative. Mass producing and advertising unhealthy food upon an unwitting and trusting clientele cohort swath base. One, that's profitable, but then actually the injury to their health is also profitable again in the medical sense. So it can be a lot of the problems and redundancies of our social life, our economics, and our technology is profitable in different ways. And one example of that, not the entirety of that, but one example is that if you want to have a lot of problems in the society or different dynamics that are available for profit based on a compromised citizen base, why don't you get a whole bunch of children, tens, 20s, hundreds, a few thousand of them, stick them together like that, and let it like they had this book called what was it called? They had this book about these young children that got marooned, and then they actually amount to becoming cannibals. Someone might think of that book. It's a famous book. So The Flies, Lord of the Flies. A lot of school is actually like Lord of the Flies, but that was only like 10 or 20 kids. You have hundreds, a few thousand of kids together, almost like Lord of the Flies. So you're gonna have leaders within that. You're gonna have brutality within that, and you're gonna have like injury to self-esteem that can amount to mental health and taking away some of our experiences for enjoying life then as children and as adults based on the experience that we have as children. So I just want to point that out, is that when they say like we don't need no education, we also don't need stupid ass kids that we wouldn't be having a reason to be around in nature, that you got all of us stuck together there like a pig pen. Is like we also don't need that, and that's a part of the problem too. But I wanted to say that what that made me aware of is like when I was having that experience as a driver with these students, that they wouldn't respond to my authority, they wouldn't respond to the authority of the school staff, and the fact that they were being reprimanded and it was being called to the attention of their parents. They wouldn't respond to that. So what happened with that? There was an administrator. Some of these schools, they have different administrators. You don't know what their actual job is. You have actually adults that are paid to be cool in front of kids. Like they're not exactly a teacher. They're not exactly security, but they're just floating around the school and being cool and somehow getting the kids to cooperate. But kids actually do respond to that. So the kids, they respond to the authority of their peers, peer pressure, that is, peer authority, that is, and they also respond to the pressure, the influence and the pull of other like young adults that would seem like savvy and cool, and they're kind of like a mediation between the authority of the student body itself, then the actual teachers and administrators. Sometimes you just have cool people. So I don't know if they're security guards or what the hell they are, but they'll just be around like that, and they can actually fix problems like that. So I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but one of them, the solution was, they'll find the coolest kid on the bus. They're the most mature, but also like the coolest kid. So for me, that had been like a young female student that was like at the older end of elementary, and he's like, I just want to let you know. So this is gonna be my eyes and ears on the bus. He was deputizing her. He was making her his lieutenant on my bus, to make her an eyes on the ground, to let him know directly what's going on with the others. Now those buses, they're surveyed by camera apparatus. But the standpoint of the school was, let's bring on the coolest kid, the savviest kid, as a means of surveillance, but also somewhat exerting authority and having pull. So he actually just increased her rank as a student and actually employed her as a student to within the mechanics of the authority apparatus, the influence apparatus of the school structure, as a means to to handle some unruly students. So I just wanted to point that out, that's interesting, that actually students are actually faculty, if you appreciate it. But some of they're having, but that plays out further, because those students, they're going to have those favors, those graces, that self-esteem that comes with that. Then also those experiences of school, but also the venues that recruit at schools for further opportunity, economic, over a lifetime. So that can actually, that type of veering off right there, the students that school is not working for, the bus is not working for, the authority of the teachers is not working for, the home life is not working for, you have that. But then you also have the students where the opposite of that, because there's a range of anything, there's a two sides of anything. So you have the students that it's exactly working for, and it's starting to diverge, where now they're actually deputized, they're already a lieutenant, they're already a second lieutenant without having gone to ROTC. And now they're having that esteem, but also that pull among other students, but also somewhat more faculty, because you just said that's a lieutenant. So I may look at that student a little different than another student, because you said that out your mouth. That's now a deputy of yours. So that's going to affect the way that I look at that student. I was already respectful for that, towards that student, and had respect for that student, because they were mature and an excellent student. You could appreciate that. But officially now I look at that student differently. They look at themselves differently. They interact differently. They're standing out now. They're an all-star now. The old days they say teacher's pet, but that can play out into social and economic outcomes and experience of life that amount to quality of life that's vastly different among students. And I wanted to point that out. But what I was thinking is that sometimes we are all connected, so there can be synchronicities in that. It's not just that it's something from a higher power, but it's that we're actually all the same person. And so, but what I was thinking is that one of the most unique things that I can remember about my school experience is that when I use my feet to trip that person, that privileged entitled statured student, largely by his own merit. So you could say we have a meritocracy. A lot of people, they appreciate some of that standpoint of the American dream, American exceptionalism, that people of foreign and nationally subscribe to, is the concept of meritocracy. Is that we're on an even playing field. We distinguish ourselves by our talent and also our initiative within that, and the selling of that, the combination of talent and initiative that would both be necessary together to have a unique outcome, to be worth having privilege. So that's the actual. So you could say that we don't have a privileged society because we have a meritocracy, or you could say we exactly have a privileged society because we have the air and pretension of a meritocracy, which substantiates our actual discrepancy in outcomes and enjoyment of life and opportunity for life, both ourselves and our descendants or potential descendants. Because we have the concept of a meritocracy, where from some of this video, if you appreciate this line of reasoning, we don't necessarily have a meritocracy in the standpoint to engage life, but also our own potential. We don't have the same background to do that. That would be the meritocracy you're speaking of. But we do have different skewing of outcomes and opportunities that's based upon an ideal of meritocracy. But so you'll have some students that are winning like that, but they're still privileged. Whether that privilege is from merit, the standpoint to engage and express their own merit, what have you, they're still having privilege even at a young age. But the last thing that any of us have is the degree of autonomy over our body. And to some of us, that's according to Arthur Avalon, you always have a combination of freedom and fettering from any standpoint in this existence, because it's interdependent like that. You will have this much agency to move, this much binding and obligation. So even I remember I watched a video about Michael Jordan, a cigar interview. It's a brilliant interview. And he was talking about like he was just barely getting around to having some freedom. Now this is Michael Jordan, mind you, with the Michael Jordan brand, mind you, beyond his career as a basketball player, mind you, with his reputation, mind you, with his swagger, mind you, with all of his brilliance and giftedness, mind you. And he's just barely getting some reproof, like, damn, man, like I finally got just a day, man, where I don't got to answer any meetings, man, where I don't got to go to talk to this one and that one, man. He's talking to a cigar aficionado, man. Michael Jordan, man, getting a breather, man, after being retired for this many years, man, with this much holding, man, a breather like that. So that actually just shows you that for any amount of freedom, there's actually some obligation that comes with that. Where I don't know how it breaks down for all people, but all people, they get some form of obligation. And then even if you completely evaded that somehow, you got nothing but time on your hand, nothing but leisure on your hand. According to Arthur Avalon, you're oppressed by your own opinions. The most leisured man, the man of leisure. According to Arthur Avalon, when you are idle, you appear somewhat omnipotent for that, because here go all of us breaking our backside near about busting our we're near about busting our basketballs to get stuff done, working manual labor, working long hours, working this and that, studying this and that, while crazy stuff is going on, this and that. And here go this one, got nothing to do and is tolerated for got nothing to do. That's going to appear omnipotent because you're going to look like the boss. What makes you look like a boss is relaxed. So you put your arm on your waist. You go around like some people that work hard, like military stuff like that. They say don't put your arms on your waist like that, because you look entitled. You look like you're assuming authority, because a lot of authority is assumed. You're actually assuming authority. So in your military training, I can't talk about military service, but military training, you're not tolerated for certain body language because you smack of. That means you taste of. You express omnipotence, authority, entitlement just by certain postures that you would take with your own body. So you put your hands on your waist like that, or you fold your arms. What the hell are you doing folding your arms? Like, you're the boss now? You run this place now, folding your arms? They're my damn arms, and I folded them together as I had the liberty to. You actually somewhat sold your liberty to do like military service, and that's actually a case in point, is that you sold your liberty, but you still have some degree of mobility with your body, but you're actually not tolerated from that and not at liberty for some of your own mobility, even to fold your arms like that, because you look entitled. But someone is idle like that, they really are somewhat entitled like that and somewhat omnipotent like that, because they can do anything. They have the energy to do anything, to say anything, and actually come off like that for not being forced to move while everyone else's ass is under burden. But what they will be oppressed by, and at the end, is their own vanity, their own entitlement, actually their own viewpoints, which they become heavily invested in. So if you meet someone who's really having a lot of leisure, a very entitled person, you will notice that they're invested in their attitudes and in the ideas and concepts that afford them the vanity to then the reasoning of their attitudes. And if you do something that interferes with their attitude and or the different means of agency that give them access to sensing themselves as such, as to give them their attitude, which informs does the entitlement provide the attitude, or does the attitude perform the entitlement? That can be reasoned, but you challenge their investment. So an entitled person, they have the best of all things. They have the least of all work, obligation. But they still do have investments, because it's the investment that allows them that standpoint. You challenge their investment, and now you have a fight on your hands. But what is their investment? Their investment is their ego, but also the vanity and the judgment that plays into the entitlement. But they're just their viewpoint. They are invested in their viewpoint, but they're also somewhat oppressed by their viewpoint, because their viewpoint limits them from change, growth, humility, which you actually need all that for the fullest experience of life. So none of us get past obligation from that standpoint, but we all have a degree of freedom and binding, and that's more so increased by congruent, forthright, humane, ethical, worthwhile initiative would make that stronger, according to Arthur Avalon. So an example of that, say you have something that compensates you well, but it actually is taking advantage of your body. You actually just did something unethical to yourself by engaging in employment that's not healthy to your body or maybe your self-esteem. Then you have a health outcome, a health consequence, or a social repercussion that amounts to your economic viability, but also your ability to be mobile, free. So your freedom was compromised by doing something unethical, even though it was to yourself like that. But one of the last that we have, if we have any freedom at all, is just to move our body like that. And I think that the most profound of all our movement is with our feet. I think that our sexual potency and enjoyment, it comes from certain dynamics of our feet, the electromagnetic aspects of our feet, grounding the activity of our body, but also connecting with the earth, such as the soles of our feet are so sensitive, but don't otherwise serve a purpose for being so sensitive that I know of, that would make it viable from an evolutionary standpoint as an advantage to have that sensitivity of the feet. I think a lot of it is a deeper connection that we are influencing the earth deeper with our footsteps than we appreciate, and we're being influenced by the earth deeper with our feet than we perceive. And I think that some of our vitality, health, and sexual potency is exactly coming from our feet. So you got turned on, that's a charge, but it had to do with your feet. I think the grounding of your feet, but also the electrical activity that the feet provide to your body. But that's no more than a pet theory of mine. But then but so I think that all of your so you can do different things with your body. So I can do a gesture like this. Now I'm not mad at anyone on this video, but I can flip a person the bird with my fingers. Was I honest for doing that? Was I not honest for doing that? You may be able to argue, was that honest or not, that I would flip the bird. But that my feet are right here as I make this video. You cannot, all that I have done in my life, all that I have said, all that has been done to me, all that has been said for me, said to me, by me, for me, and the opportunity and lack of opportunity that would make, the demands of maintaining homeostasis, nutrition, shelter, all the demands, opportunities, blessings, detriments, decisions, capacity, passion, talent, faith, shortcoming, saving, investment, wasting, all that. You cannot take that away from where my feet would be right now. You can't take that outside of my footwork. That's all plays into and amounts to and comes from my footwork. So the last freedom that we have is our footwork. So if you wanted to make someone cry, like a lot of people see some things you've never seen before, you haven't seen before, but I think it would actually be beautiful to see it. You haven't seen an entitled person, a person that's substantiated by the status quo. You haven't seen them cry for mercy or for failure in front of someone who had less means, less privilege. You haven't seen that convincingly, I don't think. Even Michael Jordan dunking from the free throw, I think that move culture, that was a big that was a big statement that he made with that. But I think it would still be greater to see someone entitled cry. Michael Jordan didn't make like an entitled, like you have like different players like from different backgrounds. I don't know that he made someone cry like that because of his footwork. Now he made a lot, like you damn near make you want to cry when you watch Michael Jordan. And I think the most beautiful part about Michael Jordan was his feet work. The lower he got was the more, so when he does those cool dunks up in the air, the cooler part was how low he got to the ground before he took off. The footwork he did, for me, it's the footwork that's beautiful about that. But and that's one time where I frustrated a student that was privileged by tripping them with my footwork. Now I was hella bogus for doing that, and there wasn't a good reason to do that, but I still could do it with what means I had and also what footwork I had at that young age, and I tripped him like that. But then, so I want to say that the most beautiful thing might actually be to humble someone who is who's statured, privileged, entitled, and supported by this life, winning by this life, commended as better than other people by this life, by males and females, young and old. They're better than you. They're more appropriate than you. For who they are is more appropriate to this life than you, and they're compensated like that than you, economically, socially, intimately, whatnot. They are compensated like that. You just made them cry based on footwork. That was the last means you had available to you, was your footwork. That would be beautiful. That would be redeeming, I think. So when I was thinking like that, I had that thought one day, and then I was coming home, and this person was sitting there on my way home with their feet sticking out so as to almost trip me, like a synchronicity like that. And I was talking to them. It made me start a conversation with them, and they were actually talking like a little bit prophetic. But all that they were talking about was like numbers. Do you know that this city is getting more wicked? I can appreciate this city's getting, I had damn near thought this city was getting more wicked too, because we live in St. Paul. That's based on the character in the Bible called Saul. But I was thinking like we might have to go back to naming the city Saul like it had been before, because it's really wicked like that. Just the something about the city is very wicked to me. But he's like, the city is getting more wicked, and especially around this area. He mentioned the area where I used to exactly do deliveries in the middle of the night, and the only place I did deliveries where somebody got brutally assaulted had been in this area. He's like, it's getting very wicked around there. I wouldn't. I wouldn't. He was saying it's getting more wicked. And do you know that this happened on this day? Do you remember this day, May something? This day. That was very incredible that day. And then I remember but also I'm thinking of going to Las Vegas because Las Vegas has the most 7-Elevens, and 7-Eleven is a very auspicious number. That's a great number. So I think that man knew what he was talking about just because he was referencing days like that. But I think that the actual real holiday, because if we're all connected, we're all technically having the same day each day. I think you could take that at different levels. I think we're all having the same day each day, and it is the same day each day, which is it's actually never day. It's actually night at all times. We have the experience of day, but each day is actually the same night. But we're having that experience together, and we're all the same person and same existence. So that you would be thinking systematically like that, collectively like that, along the days like that. That's significant that he was talking like that. But I think that the real auspicious and holy days, they're not necessarily known or recognized in texts that promulgate that we're aware of. So there probably likely are really auspicious days that are more so auspicious for the vast collection of us and our collective purpose, because we have an individual destiny, but we also have a collective destiny since we're connected. But then you would also have very detrimental and painful days of loss and consequence. And I think that but because we're connected like that, if you have an idea that comes to your mind, it makes sense that it's connected to the greater experience. It's part of trends that are going on, but also other people are other iterations of a lot of what you are, so they may be having the same experience. So that might be some of the timeliness of a message that comes from the heart, but also the synchronicities that would extend from that and lead into that and compound that. So I had an experience. One is like thinking about tripping that student, and then that person put their foot out in front of me. Two was thinking about getting frozen while scaling a mountain, making a video about that, and then the next day something in my feed comes with an actual picture of that. I hadn't seen that picture back in the day, but now I have a picture of what that looks like. Then I was making a comment about how I had been accosted by a group of young men in a car that looked like they could be interviewing me or prospecting me for some kind of victimization. And then they asked me who I know in the area. And I said, I know Jesus Christ. And that changed that outcome. And that may have been a mercy based on the strength of the name of Jesus Christ. Then I saw a video come in my feed about a person in Los Angeles that had been, he had been like engaged to find out if he was an opposition to people. And he was not, but he almost got victimized for appearing like opposition. And when that happened and he survived that, he gave credit to his higher power for that. And it was just similar to my experience of actually being shown mercy by leaning on the name of Jesus Christ. And so that's a similar experience that these two people had, him and myself. It might be that things are changing in society where more people are having that kind of horrible experience like that multiple people would be having the same experience. But also is that we're connected and we're somewhat living the same experience, but like on different time scales. And so I wanted to point out that it's just synchronicity like that, but that it's significant that we would express ourselves, have a means to express ourselves, and those ideas would be living and active now. So this society is exactly commending us to be more shut up that is more robotic as an aesthetic and a trend and a taste. And you may win favors with that and success with that, but that's not the only way and the best way in itself. That's the current way is what that is. And that's more of what I wanted to say with this video. I had some other ideas, but that's almost like a full video series in itself, the video prior to this and this one. So I'll land with this one, but I just want to say, I support, actually, no, forget it, man. I'm gonna go all the way. So no, I'll do another video. I have another topic that's related to this, but it's a video unto itself. So I'll land this one there. And but I hope this can be of value. And I stand for peace and love, and humane, equitable, enjoyable experience of life for all human beings and all beings.